Good morning, everyone. So, today the topic for discussion is your concepts of international trade. This is again very important topic of international finance because all these days you have been studying about the exchange rates, spot rates, your forward rates, and then cross rate calculation, and the many other things you studied. But what is the starting point? What is the beginning point? So beginning point you need to understand, and that we'll be talking in this particular session. So basically we are going to study why international trade happens. Okay, so we will be studying the various reason that why there is a need for international trade among countries, why it is required, and after this session you will be very clear that why international trade actually happens. So let's begin. So the first point is like trade promotes specialization that you are seeing on screen, right? So this is self-explanatory in nature. So whenever suppose you have started a business at your home, right? So initially, of course, you would not be a kind of a specialist person to manufacture that product, right? So you need training, then you need time also. So the moment you start devoting more and more time based on the demand which comes from the customer to produce more and more product, so you start producing, and after a certain period of time you become a specialist in that particular manufacturing of item, right? So once a country they get an opportunity for international trade, the country will start producing more and more of its product, thereby reducing its average cost of production. Okay, you might have studied about the concept of contribution that actually contributes towards meeting the fixed cost of which was incurred when establishing a company, right? So the contribution starts increasing and your cost of production starts decreasing. So after a certain period of time, once you start getting the demands, you become a specialist in that particular trade. So this trade, international trade, basically promotes specialization. That is your first point. The second point is like trade promotes productivity, right? This is again very self-explanatory in nature. If there is an opportunity for international trade, the productivity of the product increases, right? The more and more demand once a company starts getting, a company which is situated in any country, they will start promoting, they will start producing more and more of that particular product, and that will ultimately helps them in reaching economies of scale. Economies of a scale which ultimately means like reducing its per unit of cost of production. Okay, so that company will be reaching towards particular point of economies of scale. So basically that will increase their revenue in coming future. The other point is like international trade improves standard of living. Okay, so what happens here, like if a certain country becomes specialist in the production of any product, okay, so what actually happens, they get a kind of idea that how to reduce the cost per unit of cost of production, right? And then they start producing more and more to meet the international demand, right? So now earlier what used to happen that if there was no specialist for a particular product, the cost of production was very high. So once a particular country's company gets the specialization, okay, they start producing more and more, so the per unit cost of production gets minimized, right? So now the product which was available in the market at the rupees 100, for example, now it will be available for only rupees 60. Okay, because the cost of production got reduced. So now the income potential of the customers will increase, and ultimately the company will also get benefited and the customers will also get benefited, right? So ultimately this improves their standard of living in the long run. So this is the third concept of international trade, right? The fourth one is your diversity in natural resources. Now, sorry, it might happen that if one of the country, like suppose like there is a country in Saudi, in the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, they only produce crude oil, they have scarcity of the agricultural product, right? So they need the agricultural product for consumption also, like they are also humans, they want agricultural products like rice, wheat to eat, right? They cannot survive on crude oil only. But here in the Asian countries, there are certain countries which only produce agricultural product, but they also need crude oil like petroleum and diesel, which is the refined version of that crude oil, to run their infrastructure and different activities, right? So since at one part of the world there is a crude oil, but in another part of the world there is an agricultural product, so they need to exchange with each other. Okay, they need to meet the demands of each other. Okay, so this is the concept which we are studying in this particular point. Because of the diversity in natural resources, the trade happens between two countries. So this is the example: country A produces only crude oil and the country B produces agricultural stuff but not crude oil. Okay, so what will ultimately happen? One country will export crude oil to other, and the other country will export agricultural products to the country which is not having the agricultural product. Okay, so this is again self-explanatory. You need to draw this diagram in the examination if this question is asked, and you need to write all the points. But before writing all the points, you need to understand that what is the logic behind each points, right? The another point is like diversity in test among nations. So international trade also happens because of the diversity in test among nation. So like there are many of you who would be wanting the shirts of Peter England only, right? But there are other fabrics also available in the market. Like if you are an Indian, there is Indian Khadi also, but you will not like it, right? So, someone of you would be wanting a product from American fabric, right? So this is the change of test, right? So you have certain preference for certain country's product. So difference in test, a certain preference for a country's product promotes international trade. Example is a European citizen may like Indian tea and coffee. So because of that, they will be importing Indian tea and coffee from India. So international trade will happen. So this is the last point of this particular topic. So because of the difference in cost of production, this is very important logic. Because of that, international trade happens. So this point has to be written. And this point is also kind of another topic which we'll be talking in another video, because this particular reason developed the concept of comparative advantage and absolute advantage given by the David Ricardo. But before that, before coming on that particular topic, let's understand this topic first. Because of the difference in the cost of production, so the first thing that you studied in this particular international trade was the specialization. If certain countries gets the specialization in producing a certain product, they are successful in reducing the cost of production of per unit, right? So if there are two countries, country A is manufacturing a car, suppose, and country B is also manufacturing car, but country A has reached the specialization, so that is why they have been successful in reducing the cost of production of per unit, right? But the country B has not reached to that level. So you can understand this with this example, like country A is a manufacturer of cars and country B is also a manufacturer of cars, right? So per unit cost of production in country A is more than per unit cost of production of country B, right? So country A has reached the economies of scale, right? And again, there are like country A and B also makes clothes also, both the countries makes clothes, but here the situation is opposite, that per unit cost of production in country B is more than per unit cost of production in country A. So what would happen? Since the cost of production of cars in country B is lesser than country A, okay, so country A will import cars from country B, and since the per unit cost of production of clothes in country B is more than per unit cost of production in country A, so country B will import clothes from country A, right? So because of difference in cost of production, okay, wherever the cost of production, per unit cost of production is lesser, the countries should try to import items from that particular country. So that will ultimately improve the standard of living of both the countries, and also the standard of living of the customers will also increase. So that's all about this session. I hope these 6 points were well understood by you. If you still get any kind of doubt, you can let me know through comments and you can contact me. Thank you so much, everyone.